5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Incoming!
To the Omnic Lab, we're a podcast that focuses on the strategies inside the game of Overwatch. We help you and ourselves learn through trial and error in the lab, even if things get a bit crazy and maybe blow up some team comps. We'll talk about some strategies to help and tips to help you play better, and hopefully equip you, the listener, as well as we can with some instruments that you need to gain that strategic edge. I'm your host, Rob May, and joining me, as always, is Andres Gomez. What's up, Andres?
What's up, Rob? Not much, man. Just been playing as much Overwatch as I can fit in my week. This week has not been as much. I know a few of our listeners already passed me in level and prestige, so that makes me really want to buckle down and play more so I can catch up.
I hear you. So what are we doing in the lab today, folks? We are going to have tons of stuff to talk about. We're going to have a little chit chat about some of the newest patch notes and balance changes. We're going to talk about the biggest blue post since game launch from my Captain Jeff Kaplan. And we're also going to talk our main strategy this show on offense and pressure, as you can see in the title description. So this has been a busy week. Let's start out casual, and we'll get some steam, and maybe by the time the Bunsen burners get going, we'll have some strategies going by the end of the show.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so Andres, I'm going to kick this over to you. What has your team been practicing team comp-wise since the balance changes? I know we'll get to why you're going to be doing these later when we talk about the balance changes, but
it's been a weird week for the team, actually. We've had two of our players have been off because they've had other stuff, like real life stuff they've had to deal with, so
sure,
they haven't been here for the week. One of them being our main Widowmaker player, so we haven't really had a chance to really play test the team with the new Widowmaker changes that just happened. I have been playing McCree a little bit, although honestly this week we were trying out Soldier 76 kind of interchangeably, especially in some of the other maps, since he can still put out this kind of medium range pressure, and he can be really good against Pharahs. He can still get Widowmakers from a distance, that sort of thing. But I can feel the McCree changes a little bit, especially in regards to the tanks and the sort of thing. Although he's still very, very good. I don't think he's gonna get thrown out of the team composition, or I don't think he's gonna get thrown out of the competitive metagame. He is good as always, except that he doesn't melt tanks the way that he used to. His fan definitely changed.
So do you think that because of that is why Soldier is fitting that role, because he's a little bit more reliable against those tanks, even at medium range?
Yeah, I think him and Soldier fill the same kind of role, except that they have a couple main key differences. McCree is really, really good at hunting down people like Genji and Tracer because he can just stun him and kill him. So having a McCree around is almost like mosquito repellent against all these other heroes. While Soldier has a little better time at the longer range, right? McCree's damage fall off is quite sudden once you get past a certain range.
It's pretty severe, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty severe. That's the word that I was looking for. Well, Soldier can still keep up a lot of long range pressure, so it's kind of like a give and take. His ultimate is still good against Genji, Tracer, that sort of thing. So we'll see. We'll see how it evolves.
Yeah, I think it's basically coming down to, do you want to hard counter certain offensive heroes, or do you want to provide that extra bit of stability and maybe go high risk, high reward, one support?
Yeah, Soldier is well rounded, and he can put up a lot of frontline pressure, which we will talk about a little more in this episode on attack.
For sure, absolutely. So what have I been doing? Guys, mercy boys, I finally found a main.
That is awesome, dude. I heard the news. I know you tweeted it out after a successful LAN night
Yeah. We there's this website that's pretty well known within LAN centers across the globe, particularly in North America and Canada, especially. But it's called GG Circuit. It's basically a place where you can like earn coins in the LAN centers, and lots of LAN centers use it to like, hey, every time you get kills in CS:GO or every time you win games in Hearthstone, you get coins, and you get coins based off of how many hours you play, etc. So, long story short, we had like we had 12 people show up on Monday, including myself and community manager who wanted to and was able to play. And then we also had another team of 6 in New York. I think they were calling themselves Evo Gaming or something like that. So again, we played a bunch of matches, but we didn't drop a game. And basically the setup was really strange. Both teams banned 4 maps, and then the team that banned last got to choose the map that was remaining that they wanted to play on, and then you play, you know, best of 2 for payload or best of 3 for the capture point, with sudden death capture point if you tied, and we didn't lose, which was pretty bananas. I think I had at least 2 3-player reses per game on an average.
Nice.
So
yeah, once you start getting the hang of that Mercy, it's like such a valuable asset for your team, and no team ever complains about having a Mercy around.
Yeah, so it ended up working out really well. We had a couple really cool strats. I'll let you know the strat that we did use primarily was Mercy Pharah, Torbjorn on defense, but we would replace so yeah, it was like Mercy Pharah, Torb, Junkrat on defense, and then on offense it was Mercy, Diva, Genji, Widow or Soldier, Bastion or Pharah, Roadhog or Zarya. So the Genji would swap for Torbjorn on defense, and then our Roadhog would be Roadhog on defense payload, and then Zarya on offense payload.
Nice.
And then our Pharah would switch to Bastion on defense when we were halfway pushed back, if we couldn't hold them initially. And then our Widow would basically, if she kept getting sat on by some Winston, she would just switch to Soldier.
Nice. Seems like you guys had it down.
Yeah, it worked really well, and then we went into a quick match and we got stomped. So, it's kind of like there's a lot of ranges that you can play.
You know, I feel like that happens. We screamed a little bit with a team, and like, and some screams will just destroy the other team, and then you go into quick match and you get destroyed. It has happened to us a couple of times, and I feel it's because the quick match, the way that it assembles teams, sometimes can be like quite like polarizing. Yeah, like if you win a bunch of matches in a row, it'll match you with a bunch of like really good people, and you'll be like, whoa, where are these people coming from?
yeah I from what I've heard, it's kind of like quick matches balancing primarily and weighting primarily the communication of having 4 players in a call or 6 players in a call, more so than they would like the overall average MMR of the team. So they did say in this post that we'll get to here in our news section that that's a target that they want to improve the matchmaking, especially for when competitive launches, and that competitive should help iron out a lot of those kinks. So we're hopeful.
We'll see how that goes. But you want to jump into the news? Because thanks to Mr. Jeff Kaplan, we have content for days.
Yes, thank you, Kaplan. So podcasters rejoice. Let's get into the news and patch notes. 10 million players in Overwatch officially of June 14th's announcement. That number is officially the largest number Overwatch has put up since the open beta player base.
So yeah, Overwatch just keeps growing nonstop. 3 more million players have joined since last time they announced.
That's crazy. That is a lot of peanut butter for you Winston fans out there.
Yeah.
So let's get into the patch notes. We got no time, so we got way too much content. Let's get into the patch notes. So the official statement for McCree is the Fan the Hammer individual bullets used to do 70 damage a pop and not benefit from headshots. But now Fan the Hammer is 45 damage instead of the 70, which is roughly a 35% fall off damage, right? And then his reload timer went down from a 0.75, or basically like 3/4 of a second to 1/3 of a second. So he reloads much faster. So what do you think, Andres? I mean, you're the one that's actually been piloting this guy for a couple days.
I think that this is where he should be. If anything, maybe just increase the damage of the fan to like 55, maybe, because sometimes like one of the heroes that I should have killed does get away, like that Tracer or that Diva out of
Is
her
it because
mech.
of the hitbox, though?
Yeah, the hitbox is so small, and before you didn't have to hit as many shots, right? You hit 2 and they're done. But now sometimes you hit 2 and they are like at like 10 HP left, and they can like, blink away. So
Mm-hmm.
you really have to be more precise with the fans. You have to be pretty close to them to kill them. And even though it still does a ton of damage, like if a tank is just standing there still, you can still like do a ton of damage to them with the roll fan. But in the heat of the battle, with supports behind them, with Reinhardt pulling up his shield and then moving, and like people shooting at you, is not like before where you could just like roll fan and get rid of them, like even with a mercy behind them sometimes.
Right.
Now you definitely have to pick your fights. You have to be a little more kind of like shooting at the medium range, get a little better with your left clicking, and then like the fan, you can just use it more selectively. I do like that they decrease the reload on the fan though. It feels a lot more responsive. I like it a lot more this way. Once you do the flashbang, you can fan. It feels like you can fan a little sooner afterwards. After that too.
You don't have to have your roll.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that change, but then again, you don't want to be spamming it that much because the damage is being reduced significantly.
Right. I will say that I've heard from one of the videos in our links of the week that you now can play when you're countering Tracer on McCree differently than Flashbang Fan. You can basically Flashbang Headshot like you're playing Mei, and you can eliminate her.
Yeah, actually, I have been thinking of this too. It's funny that you mentioned that. I haven't watched the video, but I have tried it myself. Well, instead of just like flashbang fan, just like flashbang headshot somebody. Because headshot still deals an insane amount of damage, and especially if they're not full HP, you just need one shot and that's it.
Yeah, and again, if you're going up against Genjis, you won't have enough time between the point where you throw the flashbang and shoot 2 headshots before a Genji, if he has it on cooldown, can use his E to deflect, which also means that if he is fast enough on his reflexes, that you might not be able to use the flashbang headshot melee. So you have to be really quick. But I think we've covered that fairly well. There's a lot of other things that they've talked through on this McCree change. I'll link Cynical Nerds guys said that they had their opinions on the blue post, and they also had their opinions on the balance changes. So you guys can go check them out. Shout out to Max for doing a lot of work on supporting the community. And Widowmaker changes. So these are very simple. I'll boil them down and then I'll go into specifics. So boiling it down, her ultimate charge is going to be 10% longer than it was before. So it's kind of roughly just a tad longer for you to get that ultimate. And then her headshot damage has remained the same at fully charged and on the scope. And then her base damage is a little bit lower, and she can't one-shot 150 health targets like Zen and Tracer from body shots only. So what is that? How did they do that? Basically, they fixed her in 2 ways. So the first way was to make her base damage 12 instead of 15. So if you have no scope, or if you're in your scope and you fire a round and you don't have any charge, it just does that. And then the charge all the way up to 100% will give you up to 100% bonus damage. So max of 120 instead of 150 now. But then they changed her headshot ratio. Instead of 2 times like it is for every other hero, it's 2.5 times when scoped. And she also has this bonus when she's using her regular assault rifle as well, because it's ridiculously weak.
Yeah. Huge change for Widowmaker. And then not only that, but the scope animation being changed actually had, I think, more impact than this other change too.
Why don't you go into that?
Sure. It feels like Widowmakers before, even if they hit a body shot, not a headshot, but just a body shot, and then they didn't kill the person, they could kind of like re-aim really fast and do a very low charge shot and finish you off. It was strong enough to do that. Now they can't do that anymore. If they hit you just on the body and then try to do a little shot afterwards, more than likely you won't die unless you're like a really, really squishy hero. Now it's all about those headshots. If you're a really good Widowmaker that can constantly score those headshots, then this change is not as significant to you because you've already developed the skill that most Widowmakers will develop, is that constant headshot, critical hit, critical hit, critical hit all the time. Right. Critical hits still do the same amount of damage that they used to do. It's 300 pretty much. So you're still pretty much killing everyone one shot on the head except for the tankiest of the tanks. Yeah, fully charged. Not only that, but her ability to not be able to quick scope anymore, just like zoom in and then zoom out really fast. The best players were using this really, really offensively, and I think
this is almost at exploit levels, right?
Yeah, because they wouldn't need a charge shot, a fully charged shot anymore. These guys were so good, or are so good, at scoring headshots that basically quick scoping was becoming the standard Widowmaker play. So you just zoom in for like a quick second, try to get a headshot. If you don't get it, you zoom out, you move out of your way, and you keep being very mobile. Once you get good at this, you become super, super offensive, and I think that's why she was being able to or she was getting picked on attack so much. With this change, though, she becomes a lot more static. You can't just quick scope move, and be super erratic with this. You actually have to pick an actual sniper position and be there at least for a couple seconds.
A lot of players would like spam that key in order to give them peripheral vision and also have a little bit less of a delay between the time that the animation starts and it ends to get into the scope, as well as pop out of the scope and hit it right away so that it doesn't finish the animation. It kind of goes halfway, and then you can get into the scope back faster, as well as getting that field of vision for a few seconds to check your surroundings.
For sure. So I think this change made Widowmaker a lot worse on attack. She also became more of a selective sniper. If the compositions are really tanky and there's a lot of shields, you might have a lot of trouble with Widowmaker now. She's still great at taking out squishy targets, especially if you're good at nailing the headshots. And if you're a good Widowmaker player, you can still do a lot of things with her. But I think her and McCree will both see a significant tone down on the usage, especially in competitive play with these changes, because now you really have to be really good at this, guys. No longer you can cheat out like maybe some extra damage and like get easy body shots or easy fan hammers and still like get kills that you shouldn't have gotten.
Yeah, so kind of the collateral of this is that Hanzo players are kind of more able to compete against Widow players. And I'm happy about that because I'm a big Hanzo fan. And also the people going toe-to-toe against them, not just as far as picking, but as far as fighting against a Widow. Tracers now have a much larger advantage, and the our brother in arms, Omnic bro, Zenyatta, actually doesn't die in one shot to body shots anymore. So he can actually just like float around to his little heart's content throwing his orbs.
Yeah, definitely still too soon to tell how these changes are gonna affect the meta. I mean, for all we know, like suddenly like Winston can become like super good, or La Zenyatta combination. Who knows? Like these small changes can sometimes have like huge changes down the road. So we'll see how it evolves, especially we'll see how the competitive scene takes these changes. We haven't really seen a big tournament after the nerfs. They're still really recent, only 2 days since we've had them, so everyone's still play testing. These are our impressions of these changes. This is what I think they're gonna affect, but we'll see how it evolves.
Yep. Okay, so a couple other miscellaneous fixes with the same patch that are live is now that high bandwidth option that we mentioned with Deathblow last episode. That in custom games you can use that 60 hertz like server speed or whatever.
Tick rate, yeah.
Is supposed to have been fixed. with the stability of it so that it'll actually work.
Interesting.
So you guys
we'll probably
go
check it out tonight. Yeah, we'll probably check it out tonight, and it was Scrim with the team. So hopefully that is fixed, and we'll actually see if it makes a difference.
And then there was an exploit that apparently wasn't working like it was supposed to with Mercy. And she basically doesn't gain charge when she doesn't gain her ultimate charge when she's damage boosting somebody that is firing at a shield, like Zarya shield, like Reinhardt shield, and also when they're shooting at ice barriers. So that's also really helpful for getting that ultimate charge not to charge as quickly because it already charges ridiculously fast.
Yeah, we're actually using this exploit a lot. We had our Mercy always damage boosting me as McCree, especially when we were trying to build up our ultimates, and I would just fan the hammer at the Reinhardt's shield, at the enemy Reinhardt shield, and she would get her ultimate so fast, and then as soon as she got it, we would like do a dive in, and then she would rest.
And I definitely noticed this change right away. Like I have it on the toggle option, which is what most pro Mercy players have, where you can leave the damage boost on somebody and reposition without having to hold your mouse down. So it's really, really nice. And a lot of times I'd get it just from having the Bastion that I was coordinating with just shoot up a wall.
Oh yeah, especially with a Bastion. Oh my god.
It's bananas. In like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
and
yeah, that's
also,
fixed.
like,
sorry, Mercies.
Yeah. It'll be fine. Mercy's still busted. So.
Yeah, her ultimate is way too strong. Actually, this is a good fix.
Yeah. And then we have Reaper. Apparently, Reaper was able to like shadow step outside of the gate before on some maps before the map even started.
I think in
Ilios.
Yeah, Ilios in the
also in Nepal.
Yeah, and a few of them, but I guess that is fixed. I never really encountered any problems with this.
There wasn't a whole lot of people trying to take advantage of this, but it was noticeable enough.
Yeah, but I'm glad that it's not there. Yeah.
Then there was some line of sight issues that were happening on Dorado. So some elements weren't blocking line of sight that should have. So people were dying to Diva ults left and right, and nobody knew why. So you can now line of sight correctly on Dorado. There are some exploits I did not want to link in the show notes. If you look hard enough, you can find them. But there's some places on Temple of Anubis where Symmetra can place her turrets and they're completely hidden until you're on them and you're getting shot by them. So I didn't want to help people cheat. I thought it was kind of lame personally because Symmetra shouldn't be able to do stuff like that. It's not really fair. But I think it might even only be on PC version or only on console, but I could be totally wrong. I didn't do a whole lot of research into that. But let's get into this post on Jeff Kaplan. Mega blue post, guys.
Mega blue post.
So I've done my best to summarize this so that in the next 7 minutes we're done with this segment, so that you guys can move on to the main topic, and we actually have 30 minutes to talk about our main show. So I'll run through it, and Andres, you just interrupt me when you want to make a comment, all right? And we'll stop and park there. So we have some word on what's happening internally, basically, this whole post. So Kaplan just communicating like an amazing game developer, letting us know that new heroes, new maps are being currently worked on, and there are at least a hero and a map in somewhere in the general pipeline from basically art people are finalizing it, getting it ready to ship so that it comes out and they're ready to start it, or they're balancing it, or it's prototype stage, or it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, sounds like we're going to see it this summer, so pretty soon.
Yeah. They even said that hopefully this summer we're going to get a new hero and a new map by the end of the summer, so that's pretty sweet. They also have content in the game, like their patches. They actually plan these out in a schedule similar to like a sales forecast. They do a patch forecast, and it's already planned throughout 2016 and some of early 2017. So these guys are not messing around. Getting content planned. Competitive play is supposedly in its final stages of development and needed basically a full rework from the initial stages of beta because of how much backlash it got for that 1 month season. Andres, did you want to make any more comment? I feel like we kind of beat this one with a dead horse. Like,
We talked about this
so
pretty
much.
extensively on our last show. The only thing I do want to say is that they did announce that when it comes out, they still want to be kind of like a testing period. Basically, what I think they want to do is what Heroes of the Storm did. Just release their competitive system on a kind of like a preseason mode where it's not really a season that counts. It's more like a test season because they still need the numbers to be able to like test this on a big enough scale, right? Like the whole population playing it will give them all the feedback that they need. So at least the first iteration that is supposed to be coming at the end of this month, so in a week or two, um, should be here just as a playtest. So there's still work to be done in it. I think that they've polished a lot of the things that they didn't like. For example, the duration from round to round. Like sometimes round to round would take a long time to start, and that was kind of annoying. They
Right.
also want to tweak how long it takes or how many times you get to sudden death. So we'll see how all that works. Maybe they might have some changes to the timer, the clock. Who knows, the speed of the payload.
There's even word of a PTR for competitive mode
Yeah, they
durations.
even like talk about that, like rather than releasing it to the public, maybe releasing it as a PTR, so whoever wants to actually try out competitive mode can do it. But that's what we've heard so far. Hopefully we get it soon and we can start testing with it.
I personally like the way that they did it, where they just kind of like throw it at you and let you test it, even if it's on the live servers, because people just want to play in a mode that's competitive, that they don't have to just jump into quick match, and they don't have that casual mentality.
For sure.
It's kind of like, this is where you compete and this is where you goof off, and then there should not be anywhere in between. Obviously, there's still trolls that like to do what they want to do, regardless of the game mode, but you kind of get the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
They did say that there is one of map in particular that needs a ton of tweaks, but it looks and feels totally different than every map that we've been exposed to. And they were having some issues. Specifically, he even gave us some more insight into their sight lines were not operating properly for all the heroes to have a decent advantage. Like range champions or heroes would be able to do pretty much whatever they wanted the whole game, and then the melees and the tanks were, or the melee ranges and the tanks were having a lot
Yeah,
of
although
issues.
that is interesting, I don't know if I would be completely opposed to maybe if there's like certain maps that favor certain playstyle. So if there's like a map that maybe favors like long range combat, and maybe there's a map that favors a little bit of more like close quarters, and it's understandable that they can't go to an extreme because they don't want to make these maps like unplayable for certain heroes. But just like maybe balancing just like slightly closer to those things could be interesting, just because then you have to learn kind of like that play style, and you know, like in that map, like, oh, I have to be like more range over here, or like another map you have to be a little more melee, more close combat quarters. I don't know. It would be interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree. They're also talking through, they're in early stages, very early stages of developing a spectator or an observer slash broadcaster game functions to kind of help those for people producing content or running tournaments, or just giving you a better feel of that spectating experience. And to go along with that, they also said that plays of the game and highlight reels, they want to make those feel a little bit better and more cinematic and epic. So they're trying to get them to be more engaging as well, in the same feel that they're trying to do a spectator mode, but they're trying to loop those in together. So I guess they're hopefully going to make those feel less janky. I know that sometimes when you're spectating and it's not first person and it's third person, it does kind of feel awkward, especially when you're spectating like a diva and you can't really see what she's even aiming at. And you can't like pan your camera really well around the hero, so it feels kind of odd. So yeah, that was one thing they mentioned. They also said that brawls and custom games are always being checked through. They want to try to get you into custom games that are more engaged and give players more freedom to do what they want to do in the custom games, and also help provide players experience in the progression system during custom games, which I think that's a huge quality of life assessment, especially for those players that are like, I don't want to go play quick match, or I don't want to go play customs because we need to scrim like today for a couple hours and we don't get any loot boxes out of it.
No, I totally agree with that. All these changes are super exciting. I love the changes that they want to do with the spectator, observer mode. It would be great if your friends could like follow you around, watch you. It would also be great if the functionality to like broadcast your Overwatch content was a little bit easier. I, for one, would love to be able to export my play of the game highlights and like post them on Twitter really easily. Like you can do that right now, but then you have to use like external software like OBS or Shadowplay or something like that. Yeah, XSplit to just like record yourself. It would be awesome if there was a function internally just be like, oh, that highlight was so cool. Just export it. I got
Yeah.
it. Post it whenever you want to. And then I
Yep.
love
I'm
the
the same.
idea. I completely love the idea of them supporting like a like custom game lobby like Warcraft 3 used to have, or like StarCraft, where you just create a map, you set your own custom rules, and you kind of like advertise in the title like what the map is all about.
StarCraft has this function and does it really well.
Yeah, because honestly, these modes are sometimes the modes where the community can start experimenting on how they want to play the game, and sometimes like the funnest modes come out of this sort of thing. Just to give a quick
The point where
example,
you stop playing like the main functions just to
yeah,
go goof around in
I
customs
mean,
because they're so fun.
yeah, for most people know that, for example, Dota, or League of Legends started pretty much like this. It was
Yep.
Warcraft 3. This guy made just a mode called Defense of the Ancients, abbreviated Dota, and
Mhm.
then he iterated on it a bunch of times, and people started kind of like playing it, and he kind of got popularity, and eventually it became like a game within the game, and then the game within the game became so big that they actually sold it as a franchise, and now is one of the most competitive games out there in the entire world. Um,
Yep.
but it started like that in like a custom lobby where people can like play around with like the map rules and that. And I don't think they're gonna make it as robust as the
Oh,
Warcraft
sure.
3 map maker was. I don't think you're gonna be able to make like your own custom maps or stuff, but at least a little different rule set that you can play around with, and with the added bonus that if they include XP in this sort of game, so that you don't feel like you're
Yeah.
there
That's
wasting your
that's kind of the
time.
tipping point.
Absolutely. And every player who plays this game wants to feel like the sense of progression. And right now, the only way to measure progression is through leveling, right? And if you're playing games where you're not leveling, you feel like your progression in the
It's
game
like
is kind of like
wasting your time.
stalemated. Yeah, exactly. So if they could just add like experience to custom games, that'd be the best.
Andres Craigasm. So, yeah, we're gonna blast you this last bit because it kind of all is a big catch-all, and we're losing time fast. So, basically, the community team, to go along with progression, they're trying to make progression better by allowing players. They're looking into and exploring players to be able to use multiple voice sprays, multiple
Voice lines.
sprays or more voice lines, and maybe even like random poses or randomized skins per match, miscellaneous customization type options like that. But they are a long way off. So a long way off, when Blizzard says a long way off, is pretty long. So be patient. They're coming. I know that for them, probably right now, they have a pretty good set amount of whatever's happening in the game currently. But as the game continues and we get more players and more content and more skins and more sprays, that people are going to they're going to feel overloaded with the content they already have, especially as they get this progression system. They're prestiging like multiple times and they open so many loot boxes. It's like, okay, I don't even want to progress anymore because it doesn't have any reward. So that's a good function that they're exploring. They're also investigating chat functions by allowing players to like click your card or click somebody's like player hero just to talk to them or whisper them to on PC. But they're saying that that's something they want to implement at the same level for consoles, and they're really struggling with a lot of their console stuff. And there's tons of bugs right now for consoles. Like I even saw today, last couple days, that John Horseman from the Payload podcast is like having major issues with like these looping black screens of like or loading screens on Xbox.
Oh yeah,
And
I've
then
heard in
they're
his Twitter he's pretty mad about that.
yeah, and I guess there might be the issues more on Microsoft's end, so I don't know, because apparently this
Hmm.
isn't a PlayStation Network problem. And then there's also like you can't leave queue as a group right now. And when they put this function in the closed beta, like everybody in the closed beta went bananas. They're like, finally, I can open
Thank
my
you
loot
so
boxes
much.
as a group.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys that are on console can't do this yet is like, I didn't even know because I don't have it, and I can't believe that you guys can't do this yet. Like
On
that's
console,
so
it's probably
convenient.
even worse because it probably takes even more time to leave a game and then regroup and then like
Yeah.
jump into a game. In PC is already a hassle. I can only
It's
imagine
way
in
more
console.
key commands to like find everybody and then invite them
Yeah.
and add them. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And then they also said that the friend recommendations can't be accepted on controllers. So like if you invite somebody, it says like accept YN for the friend recommendations instead of like A or B or X or circle. And that to me is like, that shouldn't happen. And Kaplan sounds really upset that this is not happening. So this is probably the first thing on their target radar for next patch is my guess for you console guys. The last couple things that he said were more or less disclaimers. He says, look, our developers right now's priority is putting the biggest and largest effort forward for a anti-cheating and anti-hacking foot forward. And that he also said that some of this stuff, quote, might not happen, and end quote. Like, as everything that Kaplan says, he wants to make his best foot forward to communicate with us, content creators, players, etc., what's happening behind the scenes as much as he's allowed to with his community management. But he also doesn't want to spoil anything for you, and yet also make sure that there's this huge disclaimer over everything that we wanted this to happen. If it doesn't happen, that's game design. You can't get it. Or you have to push it back and keep pushing it back. This is what we're looking into.
Yeah.
And from a podcasting standpoint, Andres and I, along with probably the other 10 other podcasters and content creators I've talked to, are like, we praise Kaplan. We bow down and worship him because he gives us things to talk about on our stuff.
I think it's super cool. Like, I think it's awesome that he's doing this, and in the banner that he's doing it as well. Like, he's telling us, guys, we are working on stuff, and not just that, but he tells us we're working on this, on that, we're working on this, on that. We're looking into this as well. But then he kind of like brings down our expectations, and he's like, give or take, this is just what we're working on, and it might not happen. So just
there's no timeline on any.
Yeah,
of this.
please don't bash us if this doesn't come soon and stuff. This is what we're working on, and he just wants us to know that the team is on it and they're working on the stuff that we want to see. So it's just reinforcing, just knowing that they're working so hard over there, because we know that they are, but we don't get to see it. We don't get to like really talk to any of them over there. So just whenever we get this little glimpse of news of what is happening in the company internally is super exciting for everyone, and definitely makes our job a lot easier because he basically writes content for a show.
It's like a bum going into a candy store and like, oh my gosh, all of this stuff is coming. I can't pay for it. And then the guy at the candy store just like hands you a couple pieces of candy, You're like, yes, I got some. But you didn't get the whole piece of the pie, as it were.
You still want more candy.
You get a taste. Or it's like going to the ice cream store and they give you the little sample. I guess that's probably a better illustration, but I like candies. All right, let's finally talk about this main thing. Hopefully we can wrap this sucker up in about 25, 30 minutes and keep you guys right around that 1 hour, 10-minute mark. But I'm not making any more commitments than Kaplan is, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, if Kaplan hasn't committed, we don't need to either.
That's totally right, yep. All right, so let's get into the offense. Andres, I'm going to turn it over to you. Let's do it.
Sounds good. All right, so we already did an episode where we talk about what like good habits were to have when you were defending, and likewise, there are good things that you can do while you're attacking that will make your life a lot easier and will make your enemy's team life a lot harder. To start off on attacking, I just wanted to talk about picking a balanced team. What does a balanced team look like when you're going on offense? And at least for now, we're going to focus on going on offense for point capture and payload maps. As I think this are the ones that make more sense. You know, King of the Hill, I think we're gonna make an episode
A
just
whole
on
nother
King of the
game,
Hill on its own because yeah, the playstyle is completely different. But here it goes. What does a balanced team for attack look like? First, I think you want to have one of these. I call it an area control or a soaker. Basically, it's a tank that can stand on the point or stand on the payload and can take a ton of damage. And I'm gonna be a little more specific on who can fill these roles, because yes, you can take any hero and try to like cram it into a role and be like, no, I'm gonna do this with this hero, and by some miracle it might work. But honestly, there's heroes that are better suited to do this kind of jobs. At least for this one, I have three choices that are my top ones. Reinhardt being the best one in my opinion to get this job done. And then you also have Zarya and Roadhog to a lesser extent, which are also good heroes to kind of stand on an area and be able to soak a lot of damage themselves. The reason why I say Reinhardt is the best one out of all of them is because he not only soaks damage for himself, but he soaks damage for everyone else as well. Zarya can do this with his shields, but they're limited to one person and only last 2 seconds every like 6 or 8 seconds, something like that. While Reinhardt just has a huge shield where all of your team can get behind and basically find cover. You want at least one of these guys.
Zarya is definitely the super flex.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Next, we want frontline damage. We want one person that is right there with the Reinhardt, or that can stand on the point, that can follow the Reinhardt, maybe drift a little bit from the objective, but not too much. He's gonna be basically the guy that is always shooting at them, creating that constant pressure so that get him away from the point, get him away from the payload, and kind of like carve some space for your damage or your soaker to move in with you. And for this role, I have my preferences. I think Soldier 76, McCree, and Junkrat can do the best job at this. Obviously, there's a lot of damage heroes, and you can put up pressure with a lot of them. But these tend to work really well, especially when you're behind a Reinhardt or next to one of the other damage soakers, just because they have really good like medium range pressure, as well as like a little bit of longer range, and then they can really protect you if they get close. For example, if there's somebody flanking your Reinhardt or stuff like McCree can be kind of like their bodyguard, just right there with them watching their back. Same with Soldier. Junkrat can do similar things. But I would say Soldier and McCree are the main ones. I know you like Genji in this area too. Why is that, Rob?
Well, I put like 2 extras in here, and a different role in this one. But the reason is if you want to run 2, I'll kind of skip ahead. We're gonna go into the main like others damages. Like you obviously have your area soaker, you have your frontline damage, but there's also a long range cover. And some team comps actually like to run more long range, especially on those long and skinny maps like King's Row or New Bonnie or etc., stuff like that. And I like to have Genji as not just a flanking type hero, but kind of as my main damage, just because the one guy I like to run around with on our team is kind of like not necessarily the flanker, but he's kind of like the main damage that peels crap off me, and also as a support, as well as putting out the most damage on our team. Because Genji can just get ridiculous if you have a good one on your team. Like he can basically fill any role similar to Soldier, but he just has that higher ceiling of skill.
Yeah, I was about to say that Genji can definitely put out a lot of damage, especially in the hands of a very skilled player. But if you don't have a skilled Genji, that guy is not gonna be putting out any damage. Well, if you don't have as much of a skilled Soldier or Junkrat or McCree, they can still dish out enough pressure most of the time, since they can be firing constantly at the enemy. That's why I call them kind of like your main damage or frontline damage. Moving on, you want to have a main support. For main support, I recommend either Mercy or Lucio. I think Zenyatta and Symmetra, even though they're categorized as supports, fall flat, especially when you're trying to go on the attack. Zenyatta just cannot keep up the whole team like Lucio and Mercy can. And Symmetra just literally doesn't have any heals. She's not really a support hero as like a natural support hero. She's more of a like a utility hero. She brings you a little bit of shields, turrets, the teleporter, that sort of thing. So she's more of a utility kind of hero than anything else. She's actually not that good for attack in most of the occasions, unless you're running like a really like wanky strategy, trying to like place the teleporter behind them and then like kind of flanking them after you all revive. But it's too hard to pull off. Yeah. For main supports, I'd recommend Mercy or Lucio. As at least for now, until they add more heroes, these are the true supports that you want to be running. Moving on, you want to have a long-range cover. A hero that can stand a little bit in the back and provide cover for you guys, and also get rid of stuff from a safe distance for you guys. Widowmaker is probably like one of the best for this sort of job. Hanzo can do this job as well, not as good as Widowmaker, although with the nerf he's getting kind of like a little more popularity in that sense. Pharah is amazing at this role. Zenyatta can actually fill this role pretty well too.
He's pretty good. No damage fall off on those orbs.
Even though he's a support, he's actually a very damage-oriented support, and with him, most of the time you're trying to stay in the back, and being able to send out a Discord orb and then send your orbs from like a really far distance can help you fill out this role. Sometimes not as well as Widowmaker or Pharah, but you know, depending on what composition you're trying to run and what you're trying to do, Zenyatta can fill it. And Soldier 76 can also fill this role too.
Absolutely.
Moving on, you want to have a flanker on your team. It's not super necessary. Honestly, you can just have another main damage dealer in this category, but I think it's its own role within the team, and it can help you deal with a lot of things. Your flanker can help you get rid of Widowmakers. It can help you get rid of teleporters. It's there to kind of like scout for you the enemy defenses, and hopefully the flanker that you pick specializes in countering the defenses that they have. In this in this category, we have heroes like Tracer, Genji, Reaper. McCree can sometimes act as a flanker, although I honestly feel he's a little better off around the tank area. He doesn't have to be necessarily like in the street.
Slow to do the flanking.
Yeah, he's slow, and he doesn't have a getaway mechanic. He's kind of like kill or die kind of guy. Well, Genji, Tracer, Reaper, all those have kind of like their own getaway mechanics. Your flanker is very important because your flanker can provide super valuable information for your team. He can tell you where the turrets are set up. He can hit by himself, for example, Genji can take out bastions or Torbjorn turrets from a safe distance. You got
makers, Hanzos.
Pretty much. You got Tracer, who's really good at getting behind and picking off that Zenyatta or that Mercy. She can pick up that Symmetra. Look for the teleporters, all this sort of thing. And then lastly, I like saving a spot for what I call utility or flex spot. This is basically what I call the counter spot. Once you know what your team is going up against, once you have a clear picture of the enemy team, you can kind of like adapt this spot to kind of counter what they have. Good flex spots can be like Zarya, Winston, Diva. Some teams like running Mei, although it's not super common. Zenyatta can fit in here as well. It all depends on like what your team is lacking, right? You can bring a second tank in this slot. You can bring a second support. You can bring super good counters. For example, Winston can be a great counter to a Genji or to a Widowmaker. You got Diva, which can also counter like the defensive heroes that are in like the peripherals, like Hanzo's or any of the squishy ones that can't get rid of her really fast. So yeah, it's kind of like your counter spot. What do you think about this, Rob? Do you want to add anything to it?
I just want to recap. I think you did a really good job. We're also trying to get this show in a good way, and I felt like you did a good job. So let's recap. So first and foremost, you want to have your soaker or your main tank in an area of control for attack that basically can protect the payload or protect the team as they're engaging into the capture point. You want to have a frontline damage, which is your main source of protection as the soaker. You want to make sure this guy doesn't die. And the frontline damage is also going to be protecting that main support. As you can kind of see, this is more of a waterfall approach to setting up your team. You set up the main protection point that protects, the damage, and the damage is helping you push as well as keep the main support alive. That also, in turn, keeps the other two as of their primary targets alive. Then you have your long-range cover, which provides support from the back by picking off other heroes or providing lots of damage on key targets that you want to pick. And then you want a flanker that functions similar to a scout, as well as another high-damage dealer that can get in and out of a fast food restaurant and do some serious damage. And then you have your flex role, which is basically your, as Andres put it very aptly, your utility counter. This is also a countermeasure to not only the opponent's team, but for those of you that have been asking me every day about quick match, if you want to go into playing quick match solo queue, you are essentially running yourself in as a flex spot and not have the approach of playing whatever the heck you want to play. You basically want to protect your teammates that are bad by volunteering to play support when they're doing poorly, or etc. So this is kind of like, if you're taking too much damage, you run another support. If you're taking, if you've got a lot of backline heroes you're walled up against, maybe you convince your soaker to switch to Winston and you switch to another Winston as the flex role and you double Winston. Or you run as in Azaria. It's the same thing with Diva. It's the same reason why I ran as Diva in my team. If they have like a 3 tank comp, then you run as Zenyatta because he can rip through tanks like nobody's business if you pair him with a Tracer. Stuff like that, okay? So the utility is not just only to support your team in countering the other team, but also to support your team in their weaknesses if you have a weaker team.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
So just to give you like a general sense of like the roles you want to be filling in on the attack and like an idea of like good heroes that can fill up those roles, honestly, it all depends on how creative you want to be. You can go on a composition with 5 Winstons and 1 Lucio and still win. Like, this game really is not set in stone. So these are not like the roles that you have to do. But in our opinion, this is a way to, or a guide to get a balanced team. A team that is kind of like set up for success and then can take on a lot of different situations, right? And then, yeah, it's up to you on how you want to structure it. For example, our team was running with Reinhardt as their main tank, was running with McCree as their main damage dealer. We were running with Mercy as their main support. We were running with Widowmaker as our long-range cover. We were running with, we actually were not running with a flanker. Like I said, this is kind of like up to you. You can either, sometimes we would put in a Tracer, but most of the time we were just running a second support in this role, like a Lucio. And then just because Lucio was our initiator, so rather than flanking from the sides and getting picks, we just chose Lucio's speed boost to kind of like rush the opponent. And then on our utility and flex spot, it really like changed depending on what we were seeing, the map. Sometimes it would be Zarya, sometimes it would be a Winston, sometimes it would be a Soldier 76. Sometimes if we wanted like that extra damage, sometimes it would be a Genji if we wanted that flanker, since we were not running with one but the double support. So yeah, just to give you a sense of like balanced team composition.
Yep. And then just to recap again, the stuff that I ran in my team comp, which is more or less like weaker players, I guess you could say. But we ran a main, it was either a Zarya or a Roadhog. We would run for our soaker, our frontline damage was actually a Genji. So I guess if you label him as a flanker, but I'm not sure, because we ran 2 long range covers instead. We ran a Pharah or a yeah, I think it was basically a Pharah, and then I was playing Mercy, and then we had a Widowmaker that would switch to Soldier if he needed to, and then our utility role was a Diva. So I think that's kind of how we ran it. It was kind of strange. We had more like we are stronger in those long range things, even though we were on attack or defense. Does that make sense? But again, that is basically the roles of playing Overwatch. So let's get into the steps of attack. We have our 4 steps of attack. We have recon, prep, execution, and recuperation. So let's jump into it, Andres.
When you're trying to attack as a team, there's no like hard and fast rules, right? Like it's all about what is happening in the midst of the battle, how you can read the battle, how you can capitalize on your successes and your enemies' mistakes. But just to give you like a general sense of how your mindset should work when you're starting the attack, just so you're not running around like a headless chicken, going into the middle of the enemy team, dying by yourself, and then 3 minutes into the fight, you guys have not even getting past the choke point and asking each other why you suck so much. But the reality is that maybe the team hasn't organized itself to have a successful attack. So the first step of attack, I like calling it the recon state. This is when you come out of the gates and into the first arena. I know like a lot of people like just rushing into that first choke point and kind of like seeing what's there, shooting out, dying immediately, or like not really like organizing themselves. I think that the best thing that you can do once you're right out of the gate is first scout out your enemy positions. Is there an enemy hero right outside of the doors, right out of position, way overcommitted? If there is, as a team, you want to get rid of these heroes like as fast as possible, right? And these are pretty much just free kills. If your team is organized and the enemy team has a hero totally out of place right next to your spawn point, as a team you should capitalize on those mistakes. So generally clear out your starting area. Like watch out for like Junkrats trying to get like a little tricky and leaving their little like traps. So yeah, clean the starting area and then scout out which enemy heroes are there. You don't know what you're going up against in the first, I don't know, 30 seconds of the match, 15, 30 seconds. I'm not sure how much time is it.
If it's taking longer, then your team is either struggling against their team or you're just like the person in their specific roles are not doing what they're supposed to.
Yeah. Well, I mean more like, you know, when you tab in the beginning of the game and the enemy heroes are unknown for the first like couple of seconds. Yeah. You want to basically like pinpoint what you're facing, right? Do they have a Bastion? Do they have a Torbjorn? Do they have a Symmetra? Do they have Reinhardt defending a Bastion or the Widow in the back? Yeah. Basically, you want to like identify your threats, what their setup is. Once you have identified what they have, then in our team at least we have the tank and Deathblow or team leader that basically at this point they make a call. Once we know what we're facing and kind of like the setup that they have, they make a call of where we want to start attacking. While we're doing all of this, while we're like defining what we're facing and where our like approach point is going to be, all this time is very valuable for you to like try to fire at the opponent maybe from a distance behind your Reinhardt's shield, a little bit of spam. You want to build a little bit of ultimate charge. You want to be watching out for any overcommitted heroes, like if the enemy team has people way out of the point. You want to kind of like clean this out and basically start like picking your targets, right? This takes us to the second state, preparation. Once you're in
let me say something real quick before you move on. When your team does it a little bit differently, right? Because you have that second Lucio that normally helps you engage, but you have that flanker that you can kind of commission out of the team like hub to go deal with the threat, right?
Oh yes, good point. Yeah. On the recon state, it's very useful to send out your Genji or your Tracer way to the back line. Like
or the Reaper.
You definitely don't want your flanker to stay with you there at the beginning of the game. Like his job from right out of the gate is to be behind the back line and give you vision of what is happening back there, right? He wants to like pinpoint those little Symmetra turrets that are out there kind of like flying around. He wants to pinpoint if there's a Bastion or a Torbjorn. He wants to go see if there's a Widow and basically kind of like start heading that way to start clearing out those threats or just like prevent your team or just tell them like, hey guys, this is what they have, and this is where it is, since that's the person who's going to have the most vision, at least in the beginning.
Now, if you're playing offense, though, and you're in this reconnaissance stage, it doesn't necessarily give you the flanker role, if that makes sense. It doesn't issue everybody can go and push outside of where the payload is and push them back to spawn point, okay? Like, this is what I've found a lot of my team doing when I'm playing Mercy and I'm on, with my buddy that's a really good Genji player. Everybody kind of just follows the Genji off of the payload because the Genji is the flanker, but he's also the strongest teammate. So people like to gravitate towards whoever's the most strong of the team normally is, or if there's a Reinhardt present, usually they go to them. So don't be a flanker if you're not a flanker. You're going to confuse your team in quick match, and this is a really, really important fact. Like, even if you're a good player, don't get caught out of position. You're losing yourself the game by saying, hey, 3 of us are going to stay on the payload and the other 3 are going to push all the way up. That doesn't work really well when you only have 1 support. Now, for Andres' team, running double Lucio or a Mercy Lucio, you can effectively do this strategy pretty well by having like an aggressive Lucio pushing speed and then like the Mercy running behind him, keeping the back line like healthy or the main tank hub healthy. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents for recon stage.
No, absolutely. When you're attacking, you definitely want to organize your team in a certain way. You want to have your tank with your main damage and your main support kind of sticking together as much as they can, and then you only want to have maybe your like backline damage and your flanker kind of like drifting off a little bit and changing their position accordingly so they can get their picks or get to their targets. But it's kind of like the three amigos, right? Like, main tank, main damage, and main support. Those guys want to stick together like peanut butter and jelly. All right,
so
but
then we have
let's
preparation.
go to preparation. On the preparation stage, basically you've done your reconnaissance. Hopefully your flanker has taken out like some of the threats back there and has given you some information. You have been building some ultimate charges during this time. You haven't been rushing in one by one and just getting killed. No, you're staying together as a team. You've been building some ultimate charge smartly. And basically at this time you want to define a couple of things. You want to define the route that you're going to take for the attack. You want to define the target of the attack. It's a lot easier when your team knows who to focus rather than just like running in and everybody splitting up and firing at different people. Because if you know who to focus, it's easier to stick together and kind of like get rid of that person a lot faster. And then you also want to be on the lookout for an opening. And what I mean by an opening is be very aware that at one point or another, your long range damage or your main damage dealer or even your flanker is gonna take out a key defense. You want to be ready for when this happens. Like if your Genji was able to take out the Bastion, like they got overconfident and the Bastion shot at Genji and he deflected all of the bullets back into him and got him. Or your McCree got really lucky and got a headshot on their Mercy, and the Mercy completely died out of the blue. Your Widowmaker
changed that plan.
Yeah, your Widowmaker got a headshot on their Lucio or something like that. This is what I'm talking about. As soon as you see that kill go up and knowing that you're at a 6v4 and your team at this point is ready, right? They have maybe a couple ultimates or the ultimate's almost ready to go. You have your attack route, you have your key target, and as soon as you see that opening, it's time for the next step, execution. This is when you really go for the attack. And
pull the trigger.
just as a note, I'm kind of giving you a very detailed description of the thought process, but inside of the game, all of this happens quite fast, right? Like it happens in like 30 seconds, or you want to be doing this process basically like over and over and over, and your team wants to get good at doing this over and over and over and doing it fast. But honestly, when you're practicing attacks with your team and getting better at like coordination and all this stuff, is better if you try to do it slow and do less attacks but make it more effective until you kind of like start gelling together, and then eventually the attacks are gonna become like more of like a second-hand nature, and everything will kind of like gel together a little better. You'll be able to make attacks more often and more efficiently.
And the steps are more or less a cycle rather than a 1, then 2, then 3, then 4.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. It's cyclical. You want to be doing this like repeatedly. But okay, back to execution. Step 3. Once you see the opening, once you have defined your key targets and you're ready to go, this is when hopefully your team has a strategy in place. For example, our team has a engaging strategy in place and is Lucio's speed boost while moving up as Reinhardt, McCree, Lucio, and Mercy. So basically is this ball of like death that moves up like really fast. And as soon as we see the opening, we make the call. And when the call is made of like go, 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 this means go, go, go. Nobody can stay behind. Nobody can be running around in the back porch or something like that. Nobody should be
one
like,
person makes the decision for everyone.
nobody should be like sprinting to their spawn point to try to like hunt him down way over there. Like, this is the time where you group up as a team and you move up into the objective, right? Like all this time has just been like, we're out of the gate, we're reading the opponent, we're building up our ultimates, we're looking for an opening, we saw the opening, we're making the call, go. Everybody boosts to the point, or everybody who should be moving to the point, like your flanker, your long range damage, obviously don't have to, but everybody else should be moving. Mercy sometimes is an exception. Sometimes Mercy wants to stay behind just a tad because of her ultimate. If the first wave of attack fails, she can always swoop in and bring them back. So as a general rule of thumb, those are the only people that if they have to stay a little behind should. Your flanker, your long range attack, and your Mercy or something if she has her ult up. But basically everyone else moves up and targets the focus targets that you chose before. Usually these targets can be Mercy, it can be Lucio, it can be maybe like a Junkrat does a ton of damage. But focus those key targets, get them out of there quick. Usually you never want to go in and focus, for example, a Roadhog or a Reinhardt, especially if they have a Mercy behind just healing them. It's gonna take your team way too much time to dispose of them, and it lowers your chances of success. You want to go for the quick and easy targets that can turn the tide of battle really fast, like Mercy or Zenyatta.
Supports, then high damage, then tanks, and then the rest, right? So.
Exactly. Pretty much. A couple things during execution. Commit. Definitely commit as a team. Even if you die, it's better that your entire team dies together and you all respawn together so you can like rinse and repeat. Than if two of them die, then two of you walk up afterwards, then die, and then the last person in the team is kind of straggling.
Yeah.
He decided not to retreat and still died, and now you have to wait like a whole like 25 seconds or something for your entire team to be all back up again and regrouped. So
also,
you don't want
playing
this.
with the Mercy, die together, not just as a team, but die together in the same vicinity.
That is
then
true.
You can get these huge reses.
If you die together and hopefully die near the same time, then your Mercy can do amazing reses. Then if you die like staggered and not at the same time, then like it's just bad in general.
Right. Then we have recuperation, right? After this, or do we want to?
Yeah, the last step is recuperation. Basically, when you're attacking, most of the time the attacks will fail at least a couple of times unless you're playing with an enemy team that is definitely worse than you and just roll them over. But if the teams are balanced, you more than likely will have a couple of attacks that are gonna fail until you finally get one that succeeds. You need to know this and do not get demoralized if you've done like 5 attacks and the enemy team has been able to like fend them off. It's all a matter of like keep trying, keep pushing through it, and like it's basically a rinse and repeat process, right? Basically in the recuperation stages, once your team has wiped, you want to ask yourself a couple of questions and pretty much reassess. You want to ask yourself, did we lose that fight because or team composition? Do we not have like a balanced enough team composition that we can actually do effective things? Like, are we maybe like too one-sided? Are we lacking damage? Are we lacking a damage soaker? Are we lacking support? This can be like really easy ways to lose out a match from the get-go. You should ask yourself, were we positioned right? Did we all engage from the same route, or did we split up and then got killed easily because we were not together? Or maybe like Reinhardt was not where he was supposed to be and got killed while the rest of the team like got slaughtered because they didn't have the shield. Was it a sloppy execution? Was it just that the strategy is fine, the team was fine, but you guys just missed your shots and the Widow couldn't get a kill, and maybe Lucio fell down the cliff and the enemy team died? You know, that can happen, and it's okay. You know, we're not perfect. We're humans. We're all still gaining our mechanical skills. Was it just poor teamwork? You guys didn't communicate. You guys didn't make the call. Lucio never speed boosted. Maybe Zarya ulted too early when like Pharah was still like coming back from spawn point, so she couldn't do her ultimate with her. This sort of thing. You want to ask yourself these questions and be like, okay, if that is a problem, then let's fix it, right?
Yeah. And then obviously, for me, I guess this is more or less the competitive community like Andres, but sometimes I just have to sit down and say, look, we just got outplayed. There's nothing wrong. We were hitting our shots, but they just played better, and we're going to have to rinse and repeat because our skill is at a lower tier, at least in that one instance of the fight. And that's basically the end of the cycle. Now, the last thing we're going to say about this section is that these strats that Andres has put in the cycle are strategically placed for attacking specifically on capture point, and will look drastically similar and yet different at the same time when you're playing payload, because payload is a little bit slower pace and it's kind of a moving attack objective. Like you're still protecting something similar to like a King of the Hill, but you're still pressuring the team. So you're kind of splitting the squad to engage at certain points or at certain turns where the payload is at high pressure from the defense. So it's still same principles if they have a hard defense, but it looks a little bit differently because you're constantly have to reevaluate and readjust this strategy on the fly.
Yeah, for payload maps, yeah, this is mostly for point capture maps, but honestly, once you start playing the game a lot, and especially once you start getting to the competitive, like more competitive Overwatch, you start realizing that defense and attack on payload are very similar to defense and attack on point captures, just because really good teams on defense will create choke points even on the payload that basically become almost like a point capture engagement at that point. They're not, the best teams are not necessarily like chasing the payload and trying to like surrounded at all times. They're trying to more of create a choke point right before the checkpoint and stop the payload from ever reaching that checkpoint rather than like chasing it around. So that's why it's kind of like very similar, very relatable, if it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's basically the show, guys. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking through what the Patreon is, thanking our patrons, talking through our iTunes reviews, and thanking you folks, and then we'll get to our links of the show. So without further ado, thank you guys to all of you that support us on Patreon, especially those of you who are at our scientist sponsor level. Brian K. and Blackbird, thanks again for your generous pledges for the scientist level support. When your payment clears, we're right there with you. We're going to help you. We've still talking with them this week. I just talked to Blackbird and Brian both today. And also thanks to our special new comers to Patreon, LA Instrumental and Toby H for our new Patreons. And while we were live recording, I just checked my phone when Andres was going in this, and we have a brand new scientist level Patreon.
No way.
Eric S.
Wow.
So we have now achieved our second goal on Patreon, and you guys are putting us to work. Let me tell you what, and it's good, and we really enjoy it.
We thought it was going to take a minute before we'd reach our second goal, but oh my God, you guys are amazing with all this stuff. We really, really appreciate it. It really motivates us to keep doing our best for this show, keep growing the show, and obviously keep doing stuff for you guys. If you guys don't know, we just kicked off our Discord last week, and it's been kicking off. A lot of our listeners have been joining. So if you guys haven't joined and are looking for an Overwatch community of players to play with, just talk Overwatch nonstop, pretty much every day of the week, hit us up on Discord because it's going pretty well over there.
Yep, and because we hit our first level of Patreon goal, Andres and I put together something that was part of that goal, and Andres is going to tell you a little bit about that right now.
That's correct. Some people were actually asking me about this already this week, and it was one of our Patreon goals. So I'm really glad that we actually reached it this week because we had promised to start doing our monthly game nights when we reach this second part of our goal, and it's a reality now. Hopefully we can set up a date that works for a lot of our listeners and people who want to show up so that we can do some custom games, maybe some 6v6 kind of stuff. We can meet up in the Discord and kind of like split up into 2 groups. If there's more groups that show up, we can do kind of like a rotation and see like who's the best group. We can mix and mingle players until we find something that works. We can create custom rules. Honestly, it's just like an Overwatch come together. If you guys like the show, if you guys like us, play with us and have fun. That's what we want to create.
And then our first Patreon goal, which we finally made some videos to kind of tell you what's going on with our goals and with other stuff on our Patreon page. So if you have any questions and you don't like reading, we got a quick video for you. It's like 5 minutes. Go check that out. If you're curious about what Patreon does, it's basically just a tipping service to help us out with some of our costs, to offset them, and also just to help us continually reinvesting money back into making the show great because it's not our primary function. But our first goal was creating a spreadshirt. So that means that we have shirt merch, guys, and I haven't ordered one yet, but I will get one, and I have all of them created. So if you go to our website, www.omniclab.com, and click the shop tab, it'll launch you straight there, and we have tie-dye shirts, we've got tanks for the summer, we've got v-necks, we got that sweet tri-blend. Go check it out. Some cool stuff for you over there on our website. We did get some emails from Andrew, from Brian. We thank you guys for your emails. They're in the works. I've been talking with both of them outside of the email and inside of the email. We got so much content that we don't know what to do with. So Andres and I basically have compiled a whole document for just ideas of what we're going to be doing next. So hang on to your butts. Here we go. We have some great iTunes reviews. You guys keep these coming, man. This is great. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 11 iTunes reviews this week. Thank you so much. It's been great.
We love iTunes reviews. I just want to say that I personally print every single one of them and I read it every night before I go to sleep. It really
iTunes review shrine.
It really makes me have the best dreams. It's just, I don't know, it brings me warm and fuzzy feelings to just have people that I've never like personally met in my life, but that have had a chance to listen to what we do and appreciate it and just take the time to write in and let us know that they actually like the show. That means a lot to us. It makes it worthwhile. It let us know that we're making the show and we're just not talking to ourselves here.
Yeah,
so I don't know.
It really does.
It is good. It's
People
good reading
listening.
them.
So I'm going to read the first one. We'll just take turns. We got 4 that we're going to read this week, and 2 of them actually come from within our podcast community, some other podcasters. So I'll read the first one, and then we'll go from there. So we have Tautsu from USA. June 9th says, great show. Love the passion. Really enjoy the commentary and how much they seem to enjoy the game. Really wish they had some more hard strategy discussion as they usually start strategy and get sidetracked and don't go too much into detail, but the personalities nonetheless keep it up. Thank you so much for that really honest opinion.
Thanks for writing the show. We do get sidetracked sometimes. It's especially my fault. I'm a person that sometimes likes to talk a lot, and then I just go on and on in tangents. Sometimes it's Rob who has to like rein me back in. Thankfully, we have him on the show to keep me under control with that.
Wish you guys could see some of the times that we get sidetracked, and by that I mean Andres getting sidetracked and I'm typing in our show notes, we have less time than or something like that.
We'll try to keep that in check, and I promise we'll bring some more hard strategy discussion. Hopefully, with some guests. We would love to bring in some like, pro players or people that are like really have a lot of expertise with this on the community into the show, and just dedicate an episode into like full strategy. But in the meantime, we'll try to bring you as much as we can.
Get there. Yep. And then you want to read the next one?
Yep. Totally Drunk from the USA says, a fantastic approach. Love the path Rob and Andres took with the Omnic Lab. While many podcasts bring you up to speed with the news, Omnic Lab does that and much more by bringing you engaging discussions on strategy. Their approach is a nice addition to the Overwatch community and remains a must listen for me. Keep up the good work, guys. Thanks a lot, man. Is Totally Drunk part of the podcaster community?
He is. Totally Drunk is one of the hosts of the Heroes Never Die
That's
podcast.
correct. Yeah, that's where I have heard that name. Yes. Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate you listening to the podcast, and super awesome you are creating your own content as well. If you guys want to check out
We're making our rounds to go check out your stuff. So I'm getting there. I'm really slow. I've been like binging some anime this week, so I haven't even listened to
There's so much time in the day.
So yeah. We also have another podcast host from the Overplayed podcast called Wickedella. I've actually played a few games with her in Quick Match, and she's really fun to play with. She says each week the cast brings a strategic look to how you can navigate through the world of Overwatch. This is a quickly added to my weekly rotation of podcasts to listen to. It is a must listen for new and veteran players. I look forward to these episodes every week. Keep it up. Thank you so much, Wicked. That's been our pleasure, and it's been great playing with you as well.
And the last one comes from a huge fan 18 from Canada. He says, incredible! This podcast is amazing. I listen to it at work and take notes on every episode. It's really helping me improve. I would also really love for you guys to go in depth on how to beat each specific composition of heroes. For example, my friends and I got wrecked by 3 Mei comp. Mei seems to be very tricky. Also, would love to play with you guys, although I'm only level 30. Great cast, very interesting to listen to both of you, very knowledgeable. Cheerful and respectful guys that are fun to listen to. Keep it up, your biggest fan. Thanks a lot, man. And no, unfortunately, because you're level 30, you're not really allowed to play with us. I'm sorry.
Level shaming.
No, I'm totally kidding, dude. Actually, we just mentioned that we're starting to do our monthly game nights. So as soon as we announce when we're gonna do those, what time and stuff, we'll definitely let everybody know. As far as now goes, if you want to go ahead and join our Discord, there's a lot of people in there that have already exchanged battle tags. We have like this section where you can exchange all of your battle tags. It's like a whole orgy of exchange of battle tags in there. Everyone's just like throwing in theirs. But yes, if you want to make some friends and you want to play together with some of us, I would say start over there, because that's where we're all at. And during the day, sometimes I'll be playing and I want to get that like extra 20% boost, and so I'll just go into the Discord and be like, hey man, who wants to play? And like, if you're there, well, we'll play, man.
Yeah. And don't forget, that's not, even though it's ideal for you PC gamers, the console guys have really jumped in and tried to share their console tags as well. So please go there, try to find some more console players to go play with on PSN and Xbox. We've been really neglecting them, and we give them a hard time because we're PC Master Race people.
We like console players too. There's actually a few console players in there too. So if you play it on console, make sure you stop by too if you like this community and would like to meet other people who also like this community.
Also, special thanks to those that we didn't read in the show that left us great iTunes reviews. So thank you to Jay Posty, PvP Necro, Max Hubris, JB Port, Bailey Matt 6102, DIJ4, Goose 9792. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, and we will try to keep these things coming for you. We got some great links of the week. I'm just going to blast through these, no explanation. There's the guys that we linked a few weeks back talking about Overwatch myths. A really cool stuff that has actually happened in the myth that got confirmed is probably on Reaper's teleport in a patch that they just patched. So that's probably still a myth, but go check that out. There is a getting better at Overwatch parody that is really funny that I put there. Something I'm really passionate about that my friends over at the Game Theorists channel did for the deep Japanese cultural references and stories in the literature behind Hanzo and Genji, not just in Overwatch, but in the actual, literary and historical figureheads. It's really, really cool stuff. Go check that out. Do your fellow Japanese fan proud by going to watch those. And we also have a really awesome thing that went live today, right before we recorded, that funny Jeff Kaplan response to a UI request. I'm not going to spoil anything. It's like a one-liner that is really good. Go check that out. Andres, how do you get involved with the Omnic Lab?
If you guys want to get involved with us a little more, you can find us on Twitter at Omnic Lab. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Omnic Lab. Like I said, we have a Discord. It's pretty vibrant since last week, so go check that out if you want to talk to us personally or, get a little more involved with the show. If you want to email us, you can email us at omniclabpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on iTunes if you're more of an on-the-go type of guy and like listen to us on your commute. We're now on Google Play Music as well. We just got our stuff up in there. So if you hate iTunes and don't want anything to do with them, you can go to the Google Play Store now.
I love it.
Of course, like always, if you want to support the show with a little more than just watching us and writing to the show, you can go to our Patreon and help us grow, get a little more equipment, get the game nights going. We have merch for the podcast now. We have t-shirts and a bunch of cool stuff. So if you guys want to support an awesome Omnic Lab t-shirt and represent, we got those going on right now on Patreon. So go check them out. We're also on YouTube if you are the YouTuber kind. And of course, we're always live on Twitch at Twitch TV/Omnic Lab. We're changing our time to 7 p.m. Eastern just because I'm trying to accommodate my team practices, which actually I have to head out pretty soon to go do. My team captain is here in the chat already kind of like giving me the capas.
Come on.
So, yeah, find us there. We also have our own website, omniclab.com. And if you want to personally find me, you can find me on Twitter at iPlayGames. And I also have been streaming all of my team practices on the Omnic Lab Twitch. Like we said, Twitch TV/Omnic Lab pretty much every day of the week except for Wednesdays. So if you want to see how we're improving, or if you want to see me suck in certain occasions, go check that out.
Go harass him at Omnic Lab's Twitch feed. Please do. If you guys want to check out more content creators, our friend Maro is created one of the best collections of people in Discord over at discord.me/League of Overwatchers or discord.me/LOO. Basically, it stands for League of Overwatchers community people. So these are people making content on video, on Twitch, on podcasts, predominantly. It's a really great community. It's got some cool bots set up there. Go check it out and join us. We're also there. If you want to find me, which you probably don't because Andres is a skilled player, but if you want to watch me play really badly, you can join up with me on Twitter at NotRob. You can also hang out with my Facebook digital portfolio over at NotRob Media. You can check out my Twitch at NotRobMay. I can only really stream Hearthstone right now because I'm still on a laptop. That's, again, part of why we have a Patreon, so that I can maybe invest in a computer when I move to Japan. And then you can go check out both of the Hearthstone podcasts that Andres and I produce. Andres over at Coin Concede podcast and myself over at Velen's Chosen podcast. Slightly different approaches for those. Go check them out in their descriptions. And just remember, guys, you will never, ever come to the lab and be expected to be that lab rat. Be a scientist. We'll see you next week.
I have not